Made them, he made them pay, and he made them have to back down. David, you with me?
I'm here. Good to see you, or hear you again, Joe.
Yeah. I'm so glad you could take time with me today. Now, you've got a second book coming out, right?
Yes, I do. In fact, I'm supposed to get the final proof tomorrow. It's called The Devil at Our Doorstep, and it's got a lot of the first book in it, but it has a lot of stories about employees and employers across the country that have read my first book and have shared their stories with me, and I'm going to have their stories in the new book, so it's interesting.
Well, David, a lot of people would say you're obviously a Republican, you're a business owner, and of course you're going to be against unions. So, I mean, you've probably embellished this book to no end, and you're making things a bigger deal than what they actually are. What would you say to some of those people?
Well, I'd say they need to read my second book, and I'll tell you why. And this is very interesting, Joe. About a year ago, and I don't know if you remember from the book, but SEIU used clergy people to attack us, go after our customers and try and convince some of our employees that we were bad people and all that kind of stuff. And one of them read my first book, and he called me and he says, "Can we have lunch?" And I said, "I'll be happy to." And we sat down for lunch.
David, one of the clergy called you, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he looked at me and he says, "I want to apologize. I was wrong. I've read your book. Everything you say in your book is absolutely true because I was working with the SEIU plotting against you the whole time.
Wow.
And I realized I'm wrong, and please forgive me, and can I write you a letter of recommendation?" And I said, "Absolutely. I understand." He wrote a letter of recommendation. That is in the new book.
Now David, that's interesting. Okay, so let's hang on that for a minute. Here's a clergy. Here's a guy who's supposed to be paying attention to Scripture and to a higher authority. How did he justify coming out against you? What could they have possibly have told him that would cause him not to at least pick up the phone and call you and find out if any of it was true?
Well, Joe, each one of them are a little bit different, but a lot of them are naive. They just, they listen to these union organizers and big labor bosses that they know how to word things and put things into perspective. That people that are naive just say, "Oh, that sounds good. I think it's right, so I need to support this." Then you have others that are very far left themselves, and they're pro-union. They're for socialism. They want to see everybody have health care and make the same wages and all that kind of stuff. And they just jump on board right away. And here's the thing that people don't understand: the unions are very, very, very good at picking these people out and recruiting them.
Was there anything that stands out in your mind in particular that he said, caught his attention for him to lock on to helping them out?
No, he's always been a union guy, according to what he told me as we went through the conversation. And he says, "I just assumed that because you were anti-union or didn't want your people to be union, you should be attacked." He didn't even take the time to sit down and look into things and find out that, hey, we do treat our employees well. We try to do the right things. We try to give them a safe work environment and all that. He just assumed.
Now, for listeners who maybe haven't heard your story before, just give us a Reader's Digest version of what the first book was about and what you went through with the SEIU in the first book.
Well, the first book is all about card check or the Employee Free Choice Act, only it's done through what they call corporate campaigns and using neutrality agreements. And the thrust of it is that they come into an area and they vet the area, okay? They look at it and say, okay, if we unionize this many people, multiply by dues, this is how much money we're going to take in. We know what our costs are. At the end of the day, this is what we have left over. So they vetted and came into the Midwest, and they came to me and said, look, we want to help you with your people. We want to unionize them, and we want you to sign this agreement. It's called a neutrality agreement. And what that does is it eliminates the secret ballot election, takes away people's choice under circumstances where they don't have to worry about retribution or intimidation. It puts a gag order on the employer, so you can't talk to your employees, and you have to give a list of all your employees and their home addresses to the union so they can go to their homes and force them to sign union cards because, you're now at card check. And I told them no. And I said, let's have an election. I'll live with the results. And they said, you don't understand. We don't want an election. We want you to sign this agreement. If you don't, we're going to attack you, your people, and your customers. I said, well, it's morally wrong. I'm not going to sign it. Do what you need to do. And they did, and we ended up having almost a 5-year battle, and we beat them.
You beat them in federal court using the RICO statutes, right?
No, we beat them through the National Labor Relations Board, and because it's almost impossible to beat them through the RICO. Nobody has done that yet. In fact, the last one that was going to do it was Sodexo, and they backed off here a couple of months ago. And because the bar is so low to prove something against these guys, I mean, they can get away with murder in the federal courts. And but we took them through the National Labor Relations Board, and we used their tactics, which one of them was to file unfair labor practices against you, and you have to defend yourself legally against those. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And we had like 45 filed against us in 11 months. And we spent close to $1 million defending ourselves.
And you were acquitted of all of them. I mean, none of the charges stuck, right?
Every one of them. Okay. And then what we did is we turned around and one day we filed 33 against them. And the major ones stuck. We won those. We went to a hearing, and at the hearing, the administrative law judge said, EMS is absolved of all this. The union, your corporate campaign is wrong, and they threw out everything, and we won.
Wow. Good for you. Most guys would give in early on, walk away from it and let it happen. We're coming up on the break. Let's talk about your new book and the differences in your new book. And then I want to talk about some of the ads I'm seeing on TV that are kind of tongue-in-cheek anti-union. We'll talk about those after the break. You're listening to The Real Side, not the right side, not the wrong side, but The Real Side. I'm your host, Joe Messina. We've got David Bigo on with us. He's a business owner and author of Devil at My Doorstep, and his new book is Devil at Our Doorstep, how he beat the unions. And he didn't do it underhandedly. He did it the right way, and he fought back. We need to fight back, all of us. You're listening to The Real Side. I'm your host, Joe Messina. We'll be right back. We're back listening to The Real Side, not the right side, not the wrong side, but The Real Side. I'm your host, Joe Messina. Hey, get involved. Hop on therealside.com. You can hop in the chat room. It helps me direct the conversation and the topics. Or you can call in 855-REAL-JOE. That's toll-free to 855-732-5563. And, my guest right now is David Bigo. He's a business owner and author of 2 books. One is The Devil at My Doorstep, which was his original book, and now second version of the book is not second version, but the second volume, I'll put it that way, is The Devil at Our Doorstep, because we are all affected by these kind of things. And David, before we go on with this, I want to read you something that recently happened here in California. A local union wants to force unionization of, you ready for this? Parent volunteers. That's right. At the local public schools. At several schools in the city, parents have banded together to form a nonprofit booster club to fundraise and hire part-time teachers helpers at the libraries in some of these schools. And a lot of schools have lost their library assistants because they just can't afford it. The local union, though, however, the Culver City Association of Classified Employees, is not okay with that kind of initiative. The union wants the parents to continue to fundraise, but to send the funds directly to the school district so the district can hire union employees to fill part-time positions. I'd be okay with that as long as they took the union dues out of it. You know what I'm saying? Because that's where the money goes. So, David, this is just craziness, right? I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Well, Joe, what it shows is how desperate the unions are. And people don't need to realize unions used to represent 35 to 40% of the workforce in this country back in the 40s and 50s. And today they represent less than 12% and only less than 7% of the private workforce.
Yeah.
That tells you all you need to know about who they are.
Well, we did a piece on Nancy Pelosi, our favorite person.
Mm-hmm.
She actually said point blank all the way out that new Boeing plant that was open in South Carolina, was it?
Yep.
Should be closed down. If it doesn't unionize, it should be closed down. How does a congressperson say that in a free society like ours and get away with it?
Because it's all about money, and people like Pelosi and Reid and some of these others, and Obama, The only reason they got elected is because they have big union dollars behind them. I don't know if you've heard, but the unions have committed $400 million to Obama's reelection campaign.
Oh.
And people don't understand how much of they play in this thing.
Well, where are those people screaming that, big corporations, because union's a corporation, big corporations to stay out of politics? Where are those screamers now? If this was...
Well, that's right. But here's the other side of it. At least the corporations are using the money that they have from profits and going out and actually producing a service or goods to fund these things. What the unions do is they use the employee dues that they bring in to fund these liberal causes and the Democratic candidates. Most of them are Democrats anyway. And this is why people are so upset, and that's one of the things I talk about in my book, is that since I wrote the first book, I've got a lot of input from employees and employers across the country that are tired of it. And the employees are really interesting. Like, there's a gal out in your area, up in the Sacramento area, that's fighting the SEIU.
Yeah, we've had her on the show a couple of times.
Yeah, and she's trying to get the SEIU decertified out there, and I'm trying to help her behind the scenes. But they're tired of the SEIU using their money to pay big fat paychecks to the labor bosses and then get people elected, put it into politics, get people elected to help the unions regain their stature. And that is what this is all about, and the only way they can achieve this is to continue to intimidate people and businesses and employees into joining unions with the help of the federal government, and that is where it's at.
Have you seen those ads on TV where the guys are opening up their paychecks and they're talking in the locker room, and a young guy will turn around and look at the older guy and go, thanks a lot. I didn't sign up for this union stuff.
Right.
And the older guy goes, well, neither did I. And before you know it, half the people in the locker room are saying, well, I never voted on this union stuff. And a lot of these guys have not really had time to sit down, talk about it, and work it through. I mean, do you find that with the people that you're talking with?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up because, we got right to work passed here in Indiana February 1st, and I helped behind the scenes on that with the legislature and the governor to get that done. There's a movement afoot in Michigan, of all places, the home of labor, basically, and there's a United Auto Worker up there. Terry Bowman's his name, and he has started a group called Union Conservatives, and he is trying to get right to work passed in Michigan.
Wow.
And he makes the same comments that you see on that commercial. And in fact, I'm going up there next week to meet him and help him with a press conference on this stuff. These people are waking up. They understand that their money is being used for purposes other than helping the membership.
All right. So tell us about your second book. What's the difference in the second book? What's been added to it? That kind of thing. Well,
the first book, our last couple of victories weren't in there over the SEIU. After we won the appeals hearing, the SEIU and we feel the administration filed an appeal of the administrative law judge's decision. So that was still hanging out there, and it was a scary thing for us because Obama had just recess appointed Craig Becker and a couple other people that were very radical, and we thought it would get overturned. Interestingly enough, Becker recused himself, and the other ones fell in line, and we won on a unanimous decision.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
Yeah, so that stuff's in there. But then we go in these other stories, the guy in Michigan, a gal in California. I've got a gal in Pennsylvania that is an employee that sent me her story. We got those kind of stories in the book. We've got stories about what's going on with the National Labor Relations Board, the recess appointees Obama's put in, what they're trying to do to achieve card check through regulation, okay?
Yeah, it's going to be a no-vote situation again, isn't it?
Right, that's right. And we talk about right to work. I talk about some of my conversations with the politicians in Washington on this. I testified in front of Congress. That's in there. The vindication that I told you about earlier with the guy the clergy person that came back and said, hey, I was wrong.
So, David, we're coming
good stuff.
We're coming up against it. When is your book coming out?
Well, I'm hoping next week. I'm getting the final proof to look at tomorrow or Monday, and if it looks good, it's going to be on the market.
All right, we're going to put links up to your site and your other book site, and thank you. I really appreciate when you spend time with me on the radio.
Well, I appreciate it. Anything I can do to help you guys anytime, you let me know.
Thank you so much. That was David